So what really is the difference between major and minor keys? Well, every song is in a key, and rather than playing a whole bunch of random notes, we use keys to group notes together that sound good. The key of a song comes directly from the major scale. So when we say a song is in the key of A major, that means all the chords and all the notes are from the A major scale. Now you can say the same thing about a minor key coming from the corresponding minor scale, and you would be correct. But there's actually another way to look at things that'll really deepen your understanding of music, and it literally connects major and minor scales in a really cool way. All right, so I very quickly need to talk about something called the major scale formula. And all this is the pattern that we apply to our notes, right? We have 12 notes in Western music. We have to apply a pattern to those to get our major scale. And if we start that pattern on an A note, we get an A major scale. If we start that pattern on an E flat note, we would get an E flat major scale. My favorite way to remember the major scale formula is with the phone number trick. So in Canada and the US as well, I believe, we have our phone number set up with a group of 3 numbers, then a dash, followed by a group of 4 numbers. And the major scale formula is 221, 2221, which when you look at it as a phone number, it's much easier to remember. Let me quickly show you this formula in action. So if I started on a G note, this one right here, and I go from this note up to 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 1. And that gives me my G major scale. I could start this from any note and the pattern would be the same, and I would get a major scale based on whichever note I started on. The next important thing we need to talk about is the difference between a tonic and a root. So you've probably heard people talk about root notes before, and all that is when you have a chord, something like a C major chord, the C note is the root note of that chord. And that would go the same for any other type of chord as well. If you had a B flat minor 7 chord, the B flat note would be the root note. A tonic is essentially the root note of a scale. So when we have a C major scale, the tonic is a C note. If we had a D minor scale, the D note would be our tonic. You'll occasionally see these used interchangeably, and really it's not a huge deal, but it still is important to know the difference. Next, we've got parallel keys versus relative keys. And this is where a lot of the confusion starts to set in for people when it comes to major and minor keys, but it's actually pretty straightforward. So parallel keys are keys that share the same tonic. So for example, the key of C major and the key of C minor, they are parallel keys. Even though both of these keys would actually contain different notes, their tonic is the same. Relative keys are a little bit different. They are going to have a different tonic, but they are going to contain the same notes. And this might sound weird right now, but I'll give you kind of a visual explanation. So if we take the key of C major, we get the notes C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. And from our C major scale, we can actually get a relative minor scale. And when it comes to finding the relative minor scale, it is all about the 6th note. So if we were to play the exact same notes from our C major scale, starting on the 6th note rather than the first note, we would be playing the relative minor scale, which in this case is an A minor scale. So we would play A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Again, the notes are the exact same, but because we start from that 6th note, we end up with our relative minor scale. And what that means is that the key of C major and the key of A minor are relative keys. They contain all the same notes and all the same chords. We could do the same thing with a key like G major. So G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp. If we were to look at our 6th note, that would tell us that the relative minor key of G major is E minor. So every major key has a relative minor key, just like every minor key has a relative major key. Now, let's say you're playing a song and you can tell that the chords you're playing are from the key of C major or maybe A minor. How do you tell whether it is in the key of A minor or in the key of C major? And this is where things start to get a little bit subjective, because it all depends on where it feels like that chord progression wants to resolve. Does that A minor, that 6th chord, feel like home, or does that C major, that 1 chord, feel like home? Whichever one feels like a better resolution is technically the key that you're in. So a quick example in the key of C major / A minor, if I played A minor, G major, D minor, where does it feel like it wants to resolve? Back to that chord right there, the 6th chord, the A minor. It doesn't feel like it wants to go to that chord. So in this case, we would say we are in the key of A minor. Now, if I were to play a different chord progression from the same key, let's say I were to play a C major to a G major to an F major, back to a G major. Where does it want to resolve to? Right? It doesn't want to go to that A minor. It wants to go back to that C major. So this chord progression would be in the key of C major. And there would be other chord progressions using chords from the key of C major / A minor that would be a little bit more ambiguous. But really, whether you say it's in C major or A minor, it's not really going to matter that much because, again, all the chords and all the notes from both keys are the exact same because they are relative keys. One important thing to note is that because of the way relative keys work, it's pretty common for a song to bounce back and forth between the relative major and minor key. There's one more little thing that I want to mention, and that is, what if instead of starting that major scale from the 6th note to get our relative minor scale, but what if we started that same scale on the 2nd or the 3rd or the 4th note? Well, that is what would give us our modes. It's a bit more of an advanced topic, but if it is something you're interested in, I have a whole video dedicated to modes. I'll make sure to link that in the description below this video. From here, you'll definitely want to check out my lesson on how to find the key of any song by ear. It's going to take all the knowledge that you gained here and apply it to something really cool. That video will be up on the screen for you now if you want to check it out. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.